Greetings, Mavericks and new viewers. Tonight, direct and live from the Maverick News Network World Studios. This is Maverick News with Rick Walker.
Welcome back to the Maverick News Channel, everyone. Well, Trump finally got his parade. In fact, he's getting it right now. It is live. We have live feed out of Washington, D.C., where this military spectacle of military might, is rolling down the street as we speak. Let's get the feed up here. Here we go.
Special thanks to our sponsor, UFC.
Of course. Who else would sponsor WWF? What's the current wrestling? I'm not a wrestling guy. You know, Ultimate Fighting Championship, though, sure. Who else would sponsor it but the UFC? It's a show. So what do we have here today? We have this going down. We have, and this is the official feed from the White House in Washington. At least 6,000 troops, maybe as many as 7,000.
On September 11, 2001, terrorists destroyed the World Trade Center in New York City and struck the Pentagon in Washington, D.C. using commercial airliners. In response, the U.S. launched the global war on terrorism. The U.S. would stop potential threats around the world and take the fight to terrorist groups and the nations that back them. The Army immediately deployed forces to Afghanistan to destroy Osama bin Laden's al-Qaeda terrorist organization and depose his sponsors, the ruling Taliban. The 2003 President Bush expanded the war to Iraq. Soldiers and other armed services overthrew Iraq's dictator Saddam Hussein. The fight to stabilize Iraq and prevent terrorist groups from overthrowing its new government continues to this day. The campaign in Afghanistan lasted until 2021 when U.S. forces withdrew and the Taliban returned to power. Over the course of the two-decade conflict, over 2 million servicemen and women, less than 1% of the American population, deployed in support of the global war on terrorism. Most of those who served were members of the United States Army.
And while all this is going on, since we've got this slide up from the White House, we're going to go to a live feed out of New York, and this is one of the No Kings protests taking place tonight across the United States. I've got copyrighted music over on the White House feed playing right now, so we're going to take that audio down. Going back there now. Vice President, Administration. Shots of the crowd, shots of flags, lots of patriotism, lots of cops in New York. So this was a massive military parade. It's still underway in the nation's capital. It has sparked both celebration and controversy with these counter protests, these No Kings demonstrations sweeping across the U.S. In Washington, the U.S. Army's 250th anniversary being marked tonight with this grand military parade along the National Mall, a spectacle featuring over over, I said somewhere between 6,000 and 7,000 soldiers. More accurate number appears to be maybe around 6,700. 150 military vehicles, including tanks and rocket launchers, dozens of helicopters, and a skydiving display by the Army's Golden Knights. The event estimated to cost between $25 and $45 million. That's one heck of a gap in the estimate. It's only 20 million, give or take. Also coincides with President Trump's 79th birthday. That has prompted critics to call it a made-for-TV display of dominance, which makes the sponsorship from the UFC even more appropriate. President Trump is watching from a viewing stand south of the White House as crowds chant USA and wave MAGA hats. We've had cannon fire and the national anthem playing. The parade, which kicked off at 6:30, just a little over a half hour ago, despite forecasts of storms, is drawing hundreds of thousands of specters to Constitution Avenue. See if we can get you a better angle on this. We'll go back to the protest. And this is live out of New York we're looking at right now. And I think we have a better angle on it now. Here we go. Switch the feed for you. And back to the parade we go. I'd say this is unprecedented. The U.S. has had military parades before, but usually to mark the end of a major conflict, for purposes of honoring and remembering fallen soldiers. This is different. Oops, let's bring this back up. So that's back in New York again. You've seen these No Kings protests unfolding in over 2,000 cities and towns over the day, from New York to Los Angeles, Philadelphia to small towns like Pinedale, Wyoming, organized by a coalition of over 200 groups, including Indivisible and the ACLU. And these demonstrations are billed as a day of defiance against what organizers call President Trump's authoritarian policies, including recent immigration crackdowns and federal overreach. Notably, the No Kings protests are planned in Washington, D.C., have been happening there, a deliberate choice to avoid confrontation and keep the focus on nationwide resistance. And the reports we're getting out of Washington indicate that that city has never been locked down as tight as it is today. So they really had their flagship No Kings March in Philadelphia, which has drawn tens of thousands, with other major rallies in Chicago, Atlanta, Houston. We'll go to some of those feeds in a moment. We'll go back here now to the military parade. Just go and look in the chat here. Stoic teacher says, what? No robot dogs? Yeah. Where are the drones? So we have other news to cover here tonight as well. And I'm tired of the ostrich story, but it just won't stop. So David Dixon will be joining us in a little while. More documents, more information, more revelations, more truth coming out that will really make you scratch your head again tonight and wonder why the heck the people who are supporting the farm are supporting the farm. It isn't even just that they have support. It's just like, why these people? Why the freedom movement? You wouldn't really expect it, Back to New York and back to more of the parade. Let's see if we can get something out of Philadelphia here. And yeah, the conflict in the Middle East too. We'll talk about that. So okay. Let's get the Philly feed up. And here we go. And here's the Philadelphia feed.
I'm here on behalf of all of the hardworking members of the press who are caught in the crosshairs of an administration with no apparent regard for the First Amendment or for a free and independent
Actually, this is the
press.
Philadelphia feed, but they're picking up the Los Angeles and New York feeds and filtering that through. So
the News Guild's parent union, which in addition to media workers represents telecom, flight attendants, camera operators, retail workers, tech workers, organizers, engineers, public and private sector workers, nonprofit and government workers, just to name a few. In reality, I'm here today as a person to remind all of us that there is no America without our collective labor. Our country will never be great if the conditions under which we live and work are determined by a government with no regard for justice, for equality, or the core principles of our democracy. America will never be great when the people whose work keeps us safe, keeps us informed, keeps us fed, keeps us thinking and dreaming about what may be possible, may be disappeared without due process. America will never be great when workers are disenfranchised and disrespected, with unlivable wages, ever-increasing health care costs, and no path towards rest or retirement. And when the support mandated by the laws in our country, by Congress, for workers are dismantled by an executive branch that
did we lose
to be
everything?
high on its own manufactured supply of authoritarianism. President Trump and this administration cannot make us great by denying the work that goes into making America in the first place. They cannot do it by denying the history that got us here and by snatching people off streets that were literally created by the hands of working people. The First Amendment guarantees all of us freedom of speech. Upholding the first principle of our Constitution means ensuring the safety of those exercising the right to free speech. This is the job of a government of the people, for the people, and by the people. Instead, what President Trump and his administration have done is to wage an unconstitutional attack on freedom of the press, on immigrants, on individual and collective expression. This administration has taken aim at working people across every industry in this country, and we are all here collectively to say that we will not stand by.
Did we lose it? Yeah.
And allow the dissolution of our democracy, not in our streets and not in our workplaces. It is especially troubling to me that media workers, whose very job is to hold power to account, have been targeted by this administration. The president, as we know, has barred union representative journalists from the Oval Office simply because those news operations refuse to adopt his use of the Gulf of America. Congress seeks to axe PBS funding, dismantling media institutions and cutting unionized media jobs because of alleged bias against conservative viewpoints. But the truth is that by silencing the differing perspectives that emerge from ethical, fact-based reporting, undermine a free press, and risks plunging our country into an information morass. We've all seen the violence enacted on peaceful protesters in LA and the over 30 journalists working hard to cover them. We've seen them injured. We've seen police tear gas crowds, shooting them with non-lethal rubber bullets and taking aim at news journalists. And just this morning, we learned of the tragic events in Minnesota. This is the responsibility of President Trump and an administration that has created an environment that allows lawless, violent, and reckless behavior. This is not what America is, and allowing this and making an environment where it is acceptable to do this does not make America great. A principal foundation of our solidarity as a union of working people is that an injury to one is an injury to all, and so our job is to fight. We fight for our communities, we fight for freedom of speech, and we fight for a free press. We fight against oppression and injustice. We fight for our mission as a union for constant honesty in news, editorials, advertising, and business, to raise the standards of journalism and ethics, and to foster cooperation with all other workers. Because let me be clear, the attacks on media who make it possible for us to know and understand what is happening in the corridors of power in our name, that is an attack on working people. Part of our job as a labor movement is to build and invest in our communities, to lift each other up and protect one another in any situation where solidarity is required, whether it's standing up to an abusive boss or fighting against the most abusive boss in an administration that's actively trampling First Amendment rights and seeking to dismantle worker protections under the law. We are here to fight for the people whose work right now makes America great. We fight for a just and equitable future for all of us that is free of authoritarian rule. One where workers in every industry across this country can support their families and plan for the future without fear. We fight for each other, for our better selves, for who we can be collectively as a democratic nation created by the labor of enslaved people and immigrants. It is this enriched, challenging history of the work of those who came before us and the work of those who labor now that make America great and is worth fighting for. No thrones, no crowns, and sure as heck no kings. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to go to the show. Running out of memory on the computer. Here we go. Come on, computer. There we go. Okay, let's go back to these speeches.
Of his school community. Dylan is not a
New
criminal.
York.
Dylan entered
He's talking
the
about a
country
student.
legally. He entered via a port of entry and was granted the right to seek asylum in this country. Dylan is the exact opposite of the picture they tried to paint when depicting the immigrant community. And yet Dylan was kidnapped by ICE and has been suffering in detention for what is now 25 days.
Shame.
One thing about human beings is we know how to come together during times of disaster.
Yes.
This administration is a total disaster that is affecting the lives of people all across this country. Today, we are coming together in solidarity with the caring, compassionate people with empathy from all walks of life, representing various organizations fighting against authoritarianism. Together, we will survive this unnatural disaster in the White House. Together, we the people have the power. We will not stand idly by and watch our immigrant neighbors who comprise the backbone and fabric of our country get tricked, trapped, and kidnapped by this government. Free Dylan!
Free Dylan!
Free Dylan!
Free Dylan!
No kings!
No king!
No kings!
No king!
When I say power, y'all say to the people. Power!
To the people!
Power!
To the people!
When I say we the people, y'all say have the power. We the people.
Have the power!
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 All right, everyone. Up next, we're going to hear from Alana Glazer, Mark Ruffalo, and Abby Jacobson.
Hi there, I'm Alana Glazer,
I'm Abby Jacobson.
and we are patriotic Americans who believe in the tenets of this country. We believe in democracy, in the pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness, and we believe in freedom of speech. We love being American. We love the United States, even with all its imperfections, because it was founded on the idea of rejecting monarchy, of saying no to concentrated, unchecked power. And yet here we are, generations later, still watching a handful of people decide who gets freedom, who is allowed to live in dignity, and who doesn't. Total U.S. billionaire wealth is up 88% in the last 4 years. The people who were already endlessly wealthy got richer, and that took money out of the hands of the majority of hard-working Americans. It's just numbers on a screen to these billionaires, but that's money that could put food on a family's kitchen table, pay for someone's dialysis or diabetes medication. It could pay for...
I'll go back to the parade for a moment. He doesn't look happy. You think he'd be smiling, and Melania looks a little glum. Yay. Putin's parade had better coverage. I'm just saying it's true. They had better camera work. They had drones. They had steady cams and full motion, crane cams. It was better coverage. Back to New York.
Oh yeah. Can you guys pick this up? That's better. Did you hear her? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Is it clipping because it's too loud or? No, it's so loud. You're good. Okay. Okay, everyone. First of all, I want to say thank you to all the people that came out today. Really appreciate you, and I appreciate the press for being here. It means you care. You need glasses. I'm not a young man. We all have busy lives, and it's hard to make ends meet, and it feels a little desperate here in the United States today. Whether you're just starting your life like so many young people, or holding on for dear life, as so many older folks are doing here now. I think that's the way a lot of people all over the USA are feeling right now. We're holding on for dear life. That's the way the immigrant families who are being torn apart are feeling. That's the way the businesses who rely on those immigrant families for a workforce or for customers are feeling. And that's the way the blue-collar folks all over the country are feeling. That's the way the moms who are doing the grocery shopping are feeling, and that's the way the families who love people who are sick and ill or dying of cancer or in the hospital, worried that their insurance is going to be canceled, are feeling. I know that's how I feel. When I look at my phone or the news of the world around me, we're holding on for dear life and what's dear to us about being alive. What's dear to me is the feeling of calm and peace and safety. What's dear to me is my health and my family and my friends and my work and my neighbors and my community and all the different beautiful people of this country. That's what's dear to me. That's what's dear to us. You might have forgotten that. And what's dear to me is this democracy. And this feeling of togetherness and unity and brotherly and sisterly love and respect and care for one another that this movement is engendering in all of us today. I'm here because no matter how messy the founding fathers of this nation, how messy the founding fathers of this nation may have been, when we got one thing right. We wanted a nation for the people, by the people, that made each man, woman, and child equal, no matter what race or religion or anything else used to divide us as people. And that we would rule by the belief and trust in one another. That we didn't want to be ruled by a king or a monarch or a leader or a supreme leader or some crappy ass CEO. That sucked. We hated that. That's why we came to America. We literally started a whole new country based on the simple idea of no kings. And it is that idea that brought most of us here, unless you're an American native or a Mexican, to this country. We built this country strictly on the no king.
Go back to this.
sadly, today Donald Trump and the administration of billionaires, crackpots, and ICE brigades have taken over. We have a king and his court and his beige henchmen, and they're trampling on our rights and our laws and our freedoms, making themselves richer with taxpayer dollars and making us less safe with their love of other kings and dictators and the likes of Putin and Netanyahu and Kim Jong-un of the world. Well, Trump today is blowing $45 million of our tax money on his kingly dictator's military birthday bash. In our nation's capital, we are gathering here by the hundreds of thousands in locations of thousands around the USA and the world in the spirit of our founding fathers, and our brothers and sisters of the Boston Tea Party. We're patriots and we're lovers of democracy. And we're here to celebrate the land of the brave and the home of the free. And the one thing that King Trump and his masked henchmen are making clearer and clearer every day, every law they break, every single day, is that we're going to have to be brave if we want to be free. Being brave for what we hold dear, our freedoms, our democracy, and each other. It's on us, guys. We're literally together. Literally together, we're the Avengers now. No one's gonna come and save us, man. Americans unite. Who's up?
Thank you guys so much for being here and coming out. I think it's our last speaker. Yeah. I think it's our last speaker right now before we do our press gaggle. We have fabulous people back here to talk to all of you as well. If you stick around, there's some really great folks. The last one's going to be Charles Kahn from Strong Economy for All for something quick to close us out. Charles?
Good afternoon, my name is Charles Kahn, coming to you from Brooklyn. Today, hundreds of thousands of people across the country are coming together to say no kings and no dictators. But that's not all we're saying no to, right? Hundreds of thousands of people will be in the street. Millions of people will watch online. Millions of people will see it on their TVs. And if you're at home and you're wondering why we're here, it's no kings, but it's also no to masked goons disappearing our neighbors and our families and our loved ones. It's no to a government that is run by and for billionaires at our expense. It is no to taking away health care from millions of people to hand out tax cuts to billionaires. It's no to trying to destroy our public institutions like education. It's no to laying off thousands of hardworking people that make this country run. It is no to hate. But I'll also say that I'm here to say yes. I'm not just here to say no to things. I'm here because I want things, right? I'm here to say yes to more health care for every single person in this country. I'm here to say yes for billionaires paying their fair share. I'm here to say yes for a government that is run to make our lives easier and not a government that is run to oppress us and take away our rights. I'm here for my First Amendment. I'm here for all of my amendments. I came for it all. And I'm also here to say that if you are saying no to something today, or you are saying yes in whatever way you say it, in the streets, in the halls of Congress, in your state legislature, on the phone, at the doors, that you are not alone, that there are millions of people with you, that this is just the beginning, that we will not be defeated, and that today we're saying no kings, but tomorrow we'll be saying yes, and grabbing back our country and delivering the rights and the dignity and the services that we know that people power will win for us. And so hundreds of thousands of people didn't come here today to give speeches. We came here to march, and we're going to get to that. And so I want to thank all of you all for coming to the press conference. We're going to get started marching. There's a lot of wonderful speakers here. If you want to speak to them, we'll be sticking around for the press gaggle. Appreciate y'all. No kings? No kings? No kings! Thank you.
All right.
Okay, so we also have things have been mostly peaceful, but not entirely peaceful. I can tell you that, let me get this up on the screen. Here it is here. This is Joseph R. Cheklik Jr., arrested after being charged with offenses related to someone intentionally driving an SUV into a crowd of No Kings protesters, striking at least one person. He faces charges of reckless driving and is being held without bail. Also in San Francisco, authorities are investigating a possible intentional vehicle attack that injured at least 4 protesters in Georgia's DeKalb County. Police used tear gas to disperse demonstrators chanting "No justice, no peace, no ICE or police" along Chamblee Trucker Road. Additionally, U.S. Capitol Police arrested about 60 demonstrators today in D.C. on Friday evening for unlawful demonstration and crossing a police line during a protest near the Capitol. No arrests have been reported at the D.C. parade itself so far. But law enforcement nationwide, including 5,000 Texas National Guard troops and 2,000 state troopers deployed by Governor Greg Abbott, remain on high alert. Let's take a little break. We're going to come back and our coverage of all this and today's other top news stories will continue. Stay with me.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
So the other thing that made all this really weird today, because everything is crazy, it's weird, the world's upside down, just so many strange things. So this was the day for the big military parade in the States, right? Marking 250 years of the 250th anniversary of the U.S. Army. It's also Trump's birthday. And then on top of that, it's also the day where they celebrate King Charles' birthday. Irony? Coincidence? I suspect not. This is this is footage. Oh, look at, there's the Canadian flag. And there's the king. So while this spectacle is ongoing in the U.S., this is what's been happening over in London. Gee, do you think Donald Trump picked this day randomly? Did you think that what are the chances? Now, today is not actually King Charles' birthday. This is just the day when they're celebrating it. This marks the birthday of King Charles III, the British monarch. And it's also ironic that the No Kings protests, the name for those protests really draws its inspiration directly from the U.S. desire, the U.S. Revolution, and breaking away from the United Kingdom and from Britain. Yeah, the No Kings protest name, meant to reject one-person rule and authoritarianism, takes on a symbolic twist as it coincides with this royal milestone. And yet, did you notice in the speeches they did not actually mention that they were opposed to King Charles, but they mentioned other dictators? Well, there are reasons for that. I mean, if you really know your history and you understand how the British monarchy works today and the symbolism behind a lot of it, Charles is not the dictator that, say, Kim Jong-un is. We'll get into it more in the days ahead, in the weeks ahead. It's an ongoing controversy. And I know a lot of people are like, people here in Canada are embracing this we the people U.S. style republicanism, separatism in Canada, but what people are being sold up here in that regard is sort of an aberration, a twisted version of what the United States was actually formed on. It's a new sovereigntist ideology, neo-sovereigntism, sovereign citizenry. It's really, it is a little bit of an aberration. No, it's a major aberration. It's twisted. It's distorted. It's not real. I'm working on a project actually to illustrate all of that, but a lot of mistruths being promoted out there with regard to that. But I just don't buy that this is a coincidence. That I just don't believe it. So this is New York again, live. Yeah. So this was Trooping the Color, is what we had up there with that coverage out of the UK. This is an annual tradition that we were just showing you, marking the official birthday of the king. It includes also a military parade, music, a gun salute, and an RAF flyover. I understand in Washington, a lot of the flyovers were canceled because of weather. And this year, King Charles asked the royal family taking part in the parade to wear black armbands as part of marking respect for the victims of the Air India plane crash. So I'd say the tone in Britain, a lot different, a lot less, not nearly the military display that we have in Washington, more, again, symbolism, pomp and circumstance, a military element to it, but not a display of authoritarianism and brute military force. Meant really those kinds of parades as we've seen from countries like North Korea and especially Russia. Meant to intimidate, send a message. Don't mess with us. We've got the nukes. We've got the 5th generation fighters. But a lot of pushback in America today. Okay, we're going to take another break, come back, and then we're going to start digging into some of today's other top news stories.
Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, and tragedy today as well. I need to bring up an image here if I can find it. Here we go. Massive search underway related to a politically motivated assassination tonight. Let's see if I can get you an image. I can tell you that a state lawmaker in Minnesota and her husband were shot dead in their home early this morning. The victims' identities have not been officially released pending family notification, but sources confirm the lawmaker was a prominent figure who recently threatened to leave the Democratic Party, sparking controversy. A suspect described as a Tim Walz appointee was apprehended after a shootout with police. Authorities recovered a manifesto and No Kings flyers in the suspect's stolen vehicle, along with a list of other targeted lawmakers. The suspect, whose identity remains undisclosed, posed as a police officer during the attack and fled, leading to a high-speed chase. Two other individuals, reportedly lawmakers, and their spouses were also shot in related incidents, with both currently stable in hospital. Police are investigating whether these attacks are coordinated and linked to the No Kings movement, though no definitive connection has been confirmed. I'll bring this up, show you a little bit of what's going on with regard to this through the legacy mainstream media. This being the NBC feed. Let me get it up on the screen. And there we go. Let it roll.
Much information and yet so many questions still out there. Right. Well, let's get to that new information, Jose, and that is the FBI just in the last 20 seconds has released a $50,000 reward for information leading to the arrest and conviction of Vance Luther Bolter. That's a $50,000 reward. You're looking at that photograph there. In the course of that, they've put out some additional photos, one of which is a series of photos I can show you now that are as a result of the investigation. This is him, according to images that we've obtained. You can see him there, just as described by law enforcement officials, is looking like a police officer. It looks like he's got a badge there on his chest. It looks like he has some sort of a vest, as we reported earlier today. And then this photo, which matches a series of photos that law enforcement just released at a press conference. According to those officials at the press conference, they believe Bolter is trying to leave the greater Minneapolis area. He was last spotted in Minneapolis itself. You'll remember that these shootings took place in a suburb that was outside of Minneapolis. So that's the latest on this. They are absolutely looking for this individual. As far as the shooting itself, we know from some documents we've just received from our Chicago bureau that, in fact, the medical examiners determined that those deceased died of multiple gunshot wounds. That's the former lawmaker and her husband. So this individual is to be considered armed at this point. That's what the law enforcement believes. The list, we are told, is extensive that he had on him of other politicians and individuals in that area. So a lot for investigators to comb through what they are calling a targeted political killing, Jose. So, Tom, let's go over some of this information that you're just bringing up.
Man. Yeah, it's messy out there today. Very messy. What else do we have going on? We've got the ongoing attacks in the Middle East. So let me just pull up my notes here. So, as you know, the conflict erupted Friday when Israel launched a major offensive against Iran, targeting nuclear facilities, military bases, and key personnel. Over 200 Israeli jets struck sites, including Iran's Natanz nuclear enrichment plant. That killed at least 78 people, including top military commanders. And that has been confirmed by Iran's UN ambassador. Iran then retaliated with hundreds of ballistic missiles and drones targeting Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, and for the first time, Haifa. And at least 3 people have been killed in Israel, with dozens wounded, and 5 injured in the occupied West Bank from rocket shrapnel. Both nations continued attacks through the day today, with Israel bombing military targets in Iran and Tehran, launching a barrage described as 20 times stronger than Friday's. I need to get some audio out of my head that's playing somewhere. And I can't have that because I can't think. There it is. I think that's it. Get rid of that. Let me take a break because I've got audio in my headphones that you can't hear, but I can.
You know, someone very profoundly once said many years ago that if fascism ever comes to America, it'll come in the name of liberalism.
Well, I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on Earth.
The entire world is watching.
Every dictator, every crazy dictator in the world is watching. The world is watching. On TV,
the entire world is watching.
On social media.
But the entire world is watching, and yes, they are seeing what we have apparently bravely been willing to say that others are thinking.
Stand for freedom. Literally stand for freedom. Let's get this done. The entire world is watching.
We're at war with the most dangerous enemy that has ever faced mankind in his long climb from the swamp to the stars.
Maverick News. Maverick News. Maverick News.
Let me have more control of my own destiny.
The world is watching.
Okay, so we have some footage here that I can show you. Here's incoming into Israel from Iran. We have other footage as well. This is also damage inside Israel, a 2-story home hit by an Iranian missile, I believe.
Yeah. Hello. When? Where? Allah. Schwab.
What else do we have? More footage here. So this conflict threatens to destabilize the Middle East, with Iran warning it may close the Strait of Hormuz, which is a critical oil transit choke point, potentially spiking global oil prices, which have already surged over 10% in the last couple of days. President Trump, navigating Republican divides, urged Iran to halt its nuclear program to avoid more brutal attacks. Those are his words. But nuclear talks scheduled for tomorrow in Oman have been canceled. Trump has also discussed the crisis with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Putin reportedly condemned Israel's actions. World leaders, including Canadian Foreign Minister Anita Anand and Turkey's President Erdogan, have called for de-escalation, warning of devastating regional consequences. Iran's allies, Hamas and Hezbollah, weakened by prior Israeli strikes, have not significantly joined the fray, but fears persist of a wider war drawing in the U.S. and other powers. The timing of this international crisis is striking as it coincides with domestic turmoil in the U.S. and Washington, D.C., that $25 to $45 million military parade marking the U.S. Army's 250th anniversary, still underway. And while some, as I say, look at that as a show of strength amid global tensions, others find it, well, I've heard the word disgusting used today by a few people, and that is what has prompted hundreds of thousands to take to the streets for No Kings protests, not just across the United States, but also in other countries, including Canada today as well. And then the assassination of that Minnesota state lawmaker linked to a suspect carrying the No Kings materials and their vehicle has raised concerns about domestic extremism. The protest organizers deny any connection to the person. But the irony is palpable, isn't it? Today is King Charles III's birthday, amplifying the No Kings movement's symbolism, authoritarianism, and yet the UK, probably even now in the face of the abuse from Donald Trump, remains one of the most valuable, powerful, and loyal allies of the United States and Canada. The irony is inescapable. It's just a twisted day, isn't it? You look at the absurdity of some of this stuff. So you've got the historical irony of the monarchy versus the republic. The UK's trooping the color rather. A centuries-old celebration of the monarch's birthday. It's not even the king's actual birthday today, which is November 14th, but it's the ceremony is held today. That's what I say. There's no way that Trump picked today by accident. It's not random. It's not a coincidence. It can't be. Because that's a display of royal tradition. This is the United States. This is Trump thumbing his nose at the monarchy. And yet he seems to hold some affinity for the royal family and a desire to become a king himself, as he has posted on social media. Some say he jokes, but I think there's an element of seriousness to it. So on the same day, the U.S., a nation founded on rejecting monarchy, stages this massive military parade. And then you've got the Trump birthday overlap, the U.S. parade coinciding with Trump's 79th birthday. It is absurdly convenient, is it not? And then you've got the scale of the U.S. parade, 6,700 soldiers approximately, 150 military vehicles, 50 aircraft, even the Navy SEALs parachuting in. Political polarization. The U.S. parade has sparked fierce debate, massive protests. Supporters see it as patriotic, detractors calling it wasteful, an authoritarian stunt, logistical overkill and cost. On full display, the parade's logistics, moving tanks and all that heavy equipment around, closing the National Mall. They had to put steel plates on the roads to prevent the pavement from being chewed up by the tracked vehicles, the tanks, and there will still be massive damage. Will have to be repaired afterward, millions of dollars worth. And this also marks Flag Day in the U.S., commemorating the adoption of the American flag in 1777. And then you've just got, and I mean, how does this look to the world? Internationally, the U.S. parade, I think it risks being seen as a chest-thumping exercise, especially when paired with the UK's more restrained, tradition-bound event. As I say, a lot of pomp and circumstance, tradition, less about the military, more about continuity, carrying on. That's really what that is. That's not a be afraid of us kind of an event. That's a look at us, we're a stable society kind of event. We've been here a long time. We're going to be here a long time. That's the message from the UK, but not so, I don't think, that military parade in the United States today. This overlap has already sparked humorous takes online with ex-posts joking about King Charles, and Facebook, Reels. We're going to see a lot more of this stuff too. And I'm telling you, the coverage by Putin for Putin's military parades, it's better. You check the video on that stuff, man. So Trump, you're going to have to step up your game there, my man. Turning this parade into a reality TV event. You're going to have to do a little bit better, my friend. I don't know. Even though it was, some inclement weather moved into, it all went off pretty much without a hitch. And just the amount of security involved too in the Capitol. Huge amounts. You could go for blocks and blocks and blocks, miles and miles, and not be able to move in that city. So, the UK parade is steeped in tradition with bearskin hats, scarlet tunics. It all appeals to a sense of continuity, as I say. The US parade, on the other hand, with its modern military might, feels like an action film, a Hollywood blockbuster. And I don't know, some of those soldiers, honestly, they just looked a little posed. Yeah, stiff. The absurdity in all of this really lies in how the UK, the United States, these two allies sharing a language and history express national pride so differently, right here on the same day, highlighting the cultural divide. And it also, in the face of this rising separatist sentiment in Canada, it really highlights exactly that same thing, where Trump says there's an imaginary line that was drawn between Canada and the United States, that we are, and a lot of people saying we're already the 51st state. No, we are not. Because here in Canada, I'm telling you, and I think that the vast majority of my fellow Canadians out there would agree with this, we're not interested in having a military display like that here in Canada. Not like that. We just don't do that kind of thing up here. It just doesn't fly. People don't like it. We're just not like that, because our culture is different, and we are a distinct nation, a sovereign country. We are not the 51st state. What happened today just proves it.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News. Defending free speech. Free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, we're going to get to this ostrich story in just a minute because David Dixon is waiting in the wings. But I wanted to highlight this heading into it because it is sort of related. In Alberta today, Premier Danielle Smith has announced that the provincial government, because the provinces oversee healthcare and have jurisdiction over healthcare in large part, they're going to start charging for COVID vaccines. This is because the uptake on vaccines has not been as enthusiastic as the government was originally anticipating. They have a lot of vaccines on stockpile, and so as a result, they're going to start charging. Let me just see if I can. Here we are, $135 million worth of wasted products. So she announced this on her radio show today, Your Province, Your Premier. And she said, the sad part, this is her quote, quoting her, she says, the sad part was that we threw away over 1 million doses in 2023-24 because people just don't want to get the vaccine in the same rates as other vaccines. And she says the delivery system that was used for COVID vaccines at pharmacies created too many wasted doses. And she says they were putting it in packs of 10. So if you opened it and gave one shot, you had to throw the rest out after 12 hours because it would expire. So that's why we ended up with so much wastage. That's kind of a crazy way to do it, isn't it? And it's not an insignificant amount of money. She added it was over $100 million. She says, I think $135 million worth of wasted products. So she had a bit of a call-in on her program. I don't have any of the audio here from it, but the new vaccine program apparently will roll out in 4 phases. And during the first, only residents and seniors, supportive living and home care, will have access to the vaccine for free. And then there will be a second phase, which will open up across the province and will be provincially funded. COVID-19 vaccines at that point will be given to people with underlying medical conditions or compromised immune systems and people living in congregate living accommodations and people on social programs like AISH or income support or people experiencing homelessness. And then there will be a third and fourth phases. All other Albertans, starting with those 65 years of age and older, will be able to purchase a vaccine. And the NDP Alberta Shadow Minister for Health, Sarah Hoffman, has released a statement calling the decision callous, anti-science, and even cruel. She says if the UCP government, the United Conservative Party government, was really interested in eliminating waste and protecting the health of Albertans, it would be promoting vaccines, she says, and the way the supply would get used. And she says that way, she says the supply would get used up and we would keep ourselves and loved ones safe. That's a quote from her. So with all that, time to go to David Dixon, who's been digging into the Universal Farms ostrich story. More out there, of course, they've ordered that cull of nearly 400 ostriches because of a bird flu outbreak, which the farm owners are defying and challenging again for a second time through an appeal in federal court, trying to prevent the cull of their birds and not really talking too much about the COVID research, which was ongoing for over a 5-year period, probably maybe even longer out at that farm. And David, welcome back, sir. How are you tonight?
Good.
So it's the story that just keeps on giving.
Yeah. Since we last spoke, we've had this appeal drop now of documents. We still get the daily updates from the farm themselves. And I have to say that the best witness for the prosecution at this point is the farm. In their court filings, for just about everything. For the alleged fight back against the two $10,000 tickets, for just about everything. I mean, literally, their quarantine, their fight against the quarantine, saying they weren't properly served. And yet, in the court documents, is the email from their lawyer acknowledging receipt of the quarantine orders.
And just to clarify, 2 fines issued against the farm. First, for not reporting the bird flu outbreak back in December properly, and then the second fine for defying a quarantine order for the farm because the Canadian Food Inspection Agency sees the farm as a biohazard, basically, that where these birds are a potential threat to other farms because the birds, and maybe even to human health, but certainly to other farms because the birds have displayed symptoms that have been tested. They could be spreaders of H5N1 bird flu.
And these are not, this is not an attack on this farm. This is not, they've made up some rules that don't exist for anyone else. These are standard quarantine requirements for these type of incidents. And they haven't followed them, but they post on their own page that they didn't have to follow them because they weren't properly served, because they had to be personally served. Then they post on their website how they've got on their website, on their Facebook page, on the 12th of February, they were given the documents on the 5th. On the 12th of February, they post all the quarantine rules saying, this is what we've got to do. Okay, that's basically saying you were served. Then, worse than that, now in their appeal document backwards and forward, their lawyer from Doan actually states, so yeah, we've got the quarantine documents, and actually ask for some clarity, and the CFAA send back detailed clarity on exactly what they have to do. Well, when you're represented by a lawyer and your lawyer starts communicating with a prosecution party, if it's sent to you, then the lawyer has accepted service on your behalf. Be careful about having a lawyer and having them communicate backwards and forwards, because if you want to pretend you weren't served and you didn't receive something, then you really shouldn't have your lawyer actually be the communication point, because they now have to go into court and say, yes, I received the documents. Or they get disbarred. It's up to them. I mean, they can play that game. But all the documents are in there. The CFAA have posted, again, on the quarantine side, they're not supposed to have anybody at the site other than the workers themselves. And the CFAA have entered in a ton of the social media posts by the farm and by Colin Big Bird and all the rest of them, showing people next to the fences, getting their photographs taken, live videos and interviews that Katie's done, where they confirm they have literally haven't followed a single part of the quarantine orders. So, strike one. This is a group of people that are saying, we're looking out for everybody's health and safety, and yet they have no concerns whatsoever about anybody's health and safety, because they're not even trying. At the beginning in December and into early January, they were spraying everything down with harsh chemicals. They were wearing PPE, going in and out, and now it's like Woodstock down there, the way everything's going on. Then they've got that the second part of or technically the first offense of $10,000, and they said, we've been accused of not letting the CFAA know, and they put up that on their page, and they put up a small piece of a longer communication, and in that it says, they say, we did let them know, and here's the call log from the 28th of December. But the ticket says you didn't inform the CFAA between the 10th and the 28th. So the CFAA is saying in the ticket, yes, we did get a call from you on the 28th, but for 18 days you didn't call us. For nearly 3 weeks you didn't call us. And actually, in the filings, that detailed document, and I can pull it up here to share, because I'm just going through all these documents now, and in it,
sorry, we got a glitch there.
Okay, no problem.
We're back.
Let me just share this screen. 25 dead. There we go.
There we go.
So this is from the motion of record in court right now, and the section here where it says 2025 12/28, that's the piece that they posted. Now, obviously, that's not the right date. Somebody typed in the wrong date when they were entering the call log. There's a glitch there, whatever. But in there, it says that was the point of communication. What they don't do is provide the rest of the communication they had, which was just a few minutes before that, the full call log, where it states that they had called on the 28th, but around, let's go, around 3 weeks ago, so going back to the 10th, weather turned bad, started having birds get sick and some dying. Around 25 birds died, spread over 3 weeks. Some birds were seen laying in water, producer thinks due to fever and dying. Less than 5% are now sick. These are big animals, 250 to 300 pounds. At that time, they couldn't even say how many. They had 440 to 420. Now, this is from the anonymous caller, who seems to have some very detailed information about what was going on the farm. This doesn't sound like, you know, somebody, a tourist driving past, or even a neighbor looking over the fence. We've got some very specific, detailed information being given to them. And so, you know, a question to anybody reasonably looking at this and saying, no, this wasn't just 2 birds that died and an overreaction. They had 25 of their birds get sick with fever and drop dead over a 3-week period, and they never bothered calling the CFAA. Now, there are rules in place. They have to do that. They didn't do it. Mm-hmm. Then on this particular log goes on, and this is what you can see at the top. I've got the link so people can actually go and have a look at it themselves, read it. But on the 30th, 2 days later, when they actually went out, the CFAA, there were another 5 deaths. So we're now up to 30 deaths, and we haven't even got into 2025 yet. And then there was a bunch more that they just kept dying, one after another. And they were, by their own admission, sick. They didn't, you know, there are some descriptions of one of the birds that got caught in the fence and died. And there's also, they described 2 or 3 very skinny ostriches, sounds possibly sick, that basically fell over, broke their legs and died, or broke their tendons and froze to death because they didn't have enough fat on them. So a horrific way for them to go. And why were they so undernourished? You know, again, this is them defending themselves against this one particular piece. And the majority of this documentation from the CFAA side, from the government side, is completely focused just on bird flu. They are doing everything they can to avoid talking about the research facility itself. That to me is, that raises some questions. Why? Because realistically, at this point, the amount of things, and we can look at some of it, the amount of things that this farm has actually filed into court should have triggered CFAA to actually bring the RCMP and Health Canada in. They were doing multi-million-dollar deals with COVID research that involved obtaining antigens from at least 3 different sources, one of which was the Canadian government via Immune Bio. After your call with Immune Bio, where they confirmed they had a contract with them, in the filings from Dave Belinsky, he actually provides that documentation of the contract, basically the email exchange, and I'll just share that one.
And that's important because we did have someone phone in who suggested it may all be fake, that even the companies might not be real, but I did confirm, spoke to someone at Immune Biosolutions. The company is real. It is still in business. They did have a business arrangement of some kind with the farm. So that's all confirmed.
Yeah, and it's actually quite clear what that business arrangement was. That business arrangement was for Immune Bio in direct contract with the Ostrich Farm to produce COVID vaccines. This is from Frederick Leduc, who was actually the chief business officer at Immune Bio. I'm still surprised that they've actually got all these emails and phone numbers in there, but that's the courts have decided not to redact them, and the lawyers decided not to, so they're out in the public now. But yeah, it's very clear. Cost of the vaccines. They were talking about what royalty they would get, and they wanted 2 separate agreements. One, the how to extract the antigens and everything. This was Dave and Karen in 2022, and then the separate one was for the actual IP of the royalty. So one related to the antigens themselves and the intellectual property, the patent, as it were, and then the mechanism involved in creating the antibodies by injecting the birds with something that resembles manufactured or however it is that we've gone over the different ways of creating these COVID, these, as Karen calls it, dead COVID virus. And we've had so many different descriptions of what it is. But here the wording from a company that is a biotech company that's in the business of working with the Canadian government to make vaccines is actually using the words COVID vaccine and a COVID vaccine license.
Yes, and the government did give them a $13.4 million contract to conduct this kind of research. The farm, I noticed, has posted, again, trying to defend the farm's position by saying that that $13 million grant is supposed to be like a symbol of Big Pharma versus the farm, saying that this company in Quebec got the grant, not the farm, but in reality, they're supposed to be working together. So if the farm had been providing things of value to Immune Biosolutions, which would be these eggs, there should have been at some point some sort of payment, or there was a business arrangement going on here, and they were looking at, as you say in these documents, is this correct when I say that they were looking at developing vaccines related to the research that was going on between the lab and the farm?
Yep. I mean, it's quite clear. This is an email. This is the email response from the chief business officer for Immune Biosolutions directly to Karen and Dave Esperson, Karen Esperson, Dave Belinsky, where they've written to him for clarification in the blue, and they responded in the red. Now, this is not a document from Immune Bio. This is not a document from the government. This is a document entered into evidence in Dave Belinsky's affidavit. This is a document
of the farm, Dave Belinsky, co-owner of the farm.
So this is his evidence. So if anybody wants to argue whether they were working with vaccines or whether they knew they were developing COVID vaccines, then take that up with Dave Belinsky, because it's here in the communication that he is so sure of. He's entered it as evidence into court and swore an oath to that. And in that same document drop, in the same affidavit, we've got the earlier drop, which is the Vancouver company developing masks. This is May 6th, 2020. And, you know, this farm that seems to need all this money from GoFundMe to be able to fight back against Big Pharma and you know, all those people who were taken advantage of us during COVID, you know, like the mask manufacturers. Well, here we have a letter of intent. So obviously there's been some negotiation already to develop for this company to have the exclusive Canadian rights for medical masks, disposable N95 and the N95, supply ostrich bodies to be able to apply to 10 million masks a month, and securing an interest for 60 million masks per month for a 5-year term at a price of 30 cents royalty per mask. Now, that contract may not have happened, but this is what they were negotiating. This is what, if this farm carries on as a research facility, this is what they're looking to do.
So just to refresh people's memories, this is because the farm was working with this professor in Japan that had developed this idea and had started to produce these masks infused with ostrich antibodies, which he claims, although the research was never really conclusive, but he claimed that these masks infused with ostrich antibodies would glow in the dark or under certain light to indicate if they'd been exposed to the COVID virus. So you could use it to detect if you'd been exposed to the COVID virus. Then went a step further later to claim that it could neutralize COVID and protect you and prevent COVID from infecting you if you wore these masks. And the farm was involved in this research. And this is a letter of intent to purchase antibodies from this mask manufacturer, a new company that was set up at the beginning of the pandemic to purchase these ostrich antibodies from Universal Ostrich Farm so they could begin to produce these masks and infuse them with ostrich antibodies as well. And as you can see, this flies in the face of this assertion that this is some small backyard, you know, mom and pop farm operation. No, this has been, it continues to be, I believe, the largest ostrich farm in Canada. Big contracts, big money. These people were entering into contracts and trying to set up business deals to cash in, to make money, exploit really the pandemic, take advantage of it, if you will never let that crisis go to waste. And really, they had an eye on making probably hundreds of millions of dollars over time by providing these ostrich antibodies from these birds by injecting them with this synthetic COVID antigen to hack their immune systems. And this is really what they had their eye on, and they want to go back to doing this exact kind of work.
And note here, in this communication backwards and forwards, this is subject to approval by Health Canada. So Immune Bio was working under direct contract from Health Canada. This mask firm and the farm were all expecting the government to be part of this, the vaccine approval, the mask approval.
I would say, and I've been thinking a lot about this, David, Health Canada has to approve this. So they, first of all, they need to prove that the research is valid. They have to prove that the science is valid. They have to prove that these masks work. Because I noticed with that company, Breathe Medical out of BC, that they are all about certification so that we're not buying masks from like China. And we watched that video from that company the other day. So yeah, I mean, this is having government oversight. The government would be aware of this because they have to apply for approval. I'm going to be digging into that company a little bit more next week. Just kind of keep your radar up on that one, because I think that that's going to go someplace unexpected next week. But we'll get into more of that later. I'll throw it back to you.
Yeah. So on top of that, so we've got these two negotiations going on to basically, for the people who are supporting them at the farm and donating to them, this was the enemy.
Right.
These people that are doing this were the enemy in 2020, 21, and still are the enemy today. And yet they're surrounded by these people protecting them. And
it makes no
again,
sense.
we see a common thread. The US is actually involved in each time there's a communication, the US is mentioned. And that takes us to the two contracts that were signed in April of 2024, which I'll just share that one. Again, it's just a gold mine. And all of this information is coming from Dave Belinsky's affidavit. This is how they're defending themselves as the poor little ostrich farm that's being beaten up by Big Pharma. So the one on the left is a contract between Struthio Bioscience, and I'll zoom in on that. Struthio Bioscience, which is actually the firm that Karen and Dave owned and was selling to Tsukamoto. And actually, there's a bit of a wrinkle in that as to how that was happening. But this is the contract between Universal Ostrich Farms and Struthio Bio. So this is an exclusive arrangement, meaning that Struthio is the only company allowed to buy ostrich eggs from UOF for this purpose. So you shouldn't have been buying them for Easter, because you might have been breach of contract for that. But the eggs were to be purchased by Struthio Bio for $500 each. That is the maximum market value at that point that those eggs had. Now, Dr. Pellick came on and actually said he'd gone through all their documents and everything they were doing, and that, in his opinion, the eggs were worth $48,000 to the farm. But they had a contract in April of 2024 that specifically locked that into $500 an egg. So, but they were going to be paid in advance. They could only use antigens supplied by. So here's where we get into this. Who's providing the antigens to them? So we've got the Immune Bio out of Quebec. We've got Dr. Tsukamoto and the Kyoto University supposedly providing them. And now here in this contract, it says Struthio Bio, the Alberta company, is supposed to be providing the antigens to Universal Ostrich Farm for them to then inject into the birds to produce the ostrich eggs, to then go off and make vaccines and masks with. They're providing them either freeze dried or the ostrich eggs themselves. And again, this is signed by Karen Esperson and the other partner in Struthio Bio, Stuart Greenberg. Now, in other documents, Dave Belinsky said him and Karen were owned 100% of the company with 50% each. And then there's some other documents that suggest that Stuart Greenberg owns part of the company. But then we get to, okay, so what was Struthio Bio doing with Dr. Tsukamoto and Japan? Well, there was a second contract, again, straight from Dave Belinsky's. So this is Struthio Bio and Ostrich Farm KK. This is the US company. This is not Kyoto University. This is the US company that is now going into contract with Struthio Bio on the same day. So back here we got April 11th, both documents signed on the same day. And Karen and Dave signed them electronically. And Dr. Tsukamoto, it's hard to see whether that's an electronic signature or whether he's digitized a signature, but it's not. These two are using a digital signature with a font. This is actually a signature that's either been digitized or handwritten. But again, April 11th, 2024, an agreement with Struthio Bio, who's now got into an agreement with Universal Ostrich Farms to provide them with antigens and then take the eggs back, and $500 an egg, with up to 100 eggs a year by each hen. The farm was good. The Struthio name will be changed to Ostrich Farmer North America. And part of this contract is an upfront payment from Struthio Bio to Ostrich Farmer in the US of 500 million yen. That's 4.7 million Canadian dollars at the current exchange rate. It wasn't much different then. And then on top of that, there's royalties, and Ostrich Farmer US will set up purification process in British Columbia, which needs all sorts of permits and everything in place. Training staff. These are the two contracts that have been entered into evidence. So again, we're talking about, 60 million masks, a 30 cent a mask, vaccines connected to the Canadian government's 13 million grant, now 4.7 million. Again, if this is a scam, this is an awful lot of effort with an awful lot of people setting up an awful lot of companies to actually do this. And it gets worse. Hard to believe it, but it gets worse because, we've got, some connections here with Struthio Bio and the Alberta government and the Alberta location. And anybody who's just popped up one more there. So anybody who's here in Alberta in the freedom movement has what I would call a hate on for Alberta Health Services. In fact, it's why they support Danielle Smith, because Danielle Smith is taking apart Alberta Health Services because they are the big bad, and they were the big bad throughout the COVID. They were literally couldn't be any worse. So here we are on January the 8th, Lyle Oberg sends an email directly to the inspector, the case handler, not just a general open email, directly to the person. So he's got that from Karen and Dave. That's not a public email until these documents were produced. Directly to her saying, you can't do this. And he doesn't write as a private citizen. He signs it. Dr. Lyle Oberg, board member, Alberta Health Services, with the Alberta Health Services logo at the bottom. Now, Alberta Health Services is basically government controlled. In fact, Dr. Lyle Oberg was put in this position just before this by Premier Danielle Smith when she fired the previous board in its entirety and put Lyle Oberg in charge. So he's currently at this point running Alberta Health Services with $13 billion worth of assets. He actually, in his email, throws his political weight at a federal agency as the former Minister of Finance and the board chair of AHS. And one thing I don't see anywhere in here is why he would be doing this. Why would the head of Alberta Health Services be interfering with a farm out in BC? Well, Dr. Oberg's been working with this farm for a decade. And actually, that contract for Struthio Bio and setting up the new company as part of the US-based company, Dr. Tsukamoto was going to be the president. Dave Belinsky would be the CEO, VP of egg production. That's an unfortunate, but that's Karen. VP of development is Dr. Stu Greenberg, who's currently the CEO of Ostrich Farmer USA. And board member, Dr. Lyle Oberg, presently chairman of Alberta Health Services. There's nowhere in that communication that he's said to the CFAA, I'm throwing my weight behind this because I stand to make millions of dollars with my business interest in this organization. This is somebody directly connected to the Premier of Alberta, who's basically, I mean, it's bad enough that we've got, people in health in the US beaking off and sending open letters. But this guy has a direct personal interest in these birds being saved, a huge financial interest in them, which he didn't declare when he was communicating. Seems a bit strange to me. In fact, Dr. Oberg actually runs a $3 billion financial company that does all sorts of medical investments. So again, and here we have, somebody else on the board who's connected to Big Pharma. This was a major operation with major backing, potentially billions of dollars worth of backing. Where are all these people writing the checks for this lawsuit? I mean, at the end of the day, this lawsuit to save the company that they're all so heavily invested in, that's going to make them potentially billionaires. And not one of them can write a check to keep the lawyer and the lawsuit going to actually save the birds. I mean, you know what? If I was heavily invested in an organization and I had access to the money these people are throwing around, I wouldn't take it to chance that some GoFundMe with some freedom movement people would save me, particularly not with what I was doing. I mean, so is there more money in the background? Is there something else going on? But it's very, very strange that all the way through this documentation, the defense of the farm is that of we're running a research lab that has huge financial benefits and is going to make us rich, and that's why you can't kill the birds. Publicly, they say, oh, they're our pets and we love them and we shouldn't kill them and we're going to save everybody by creating COVID vaccines and glowing masks. Okay, I mean, if that's what you want to do, fine, then go do that. But it's very strange that we've got people who are so anti-government, anti-mask and anti-vaccine that are about ready to actually run basically a Live Aid concert, bringing people. Tamara Lich, of the Convoy, is one of the guest singers at a freedom movement convoy anti-government protest. I'm not sure, but didn't she just get prosecuted for being part of that? I mean, to me, I would have thought there'd be some bail conditions right now on her ability to participate in this type of exercise, especially considering the amount of sovereign citizens that are connected to this. I mean, openly sovereign citizens who don't believe Canada is a country, don't believe the government, don't believe viruses exist, don't believe people can get sick, and yet they're basically standing behind, literally, Big Pharma. I mean, we're talking about billion-dollar contracts being thrown around between Japan, Canada, the US, from this little farm. And Dr. Oberg, in one of his documents, states he's been aware of and working with this farm for a decade, so before COVID. And they've been doing research since before COVID. So, which is a bit strange because they've been operating in the community and in social media up until COVID as a farming operation for cosmetics, food, and pet food. So, how long have they been injecting birds with stuff and experimenting on them?
Well, they started off back in the 1990s and leading up to 2020 they were involved in genetic mapping, genetic fingerprinting of birds, and they were involved in selective breeding to create basically, more resilient livestock, which they were also selling to other farms. So everything about that farm from day one has been about genetics. And ultimately, what we're dealing with here is something that is 180 degrees removed from being all natural. This is the opposite of that. This is entirely driven through artificial synthetic means.
And I've just on that point of DNA fingerprinting, and actually I need to that one.
Which one do you need up?
I'm just going to drop that one because it's. Let me drop that one because it won't. Right, let me share this one. So we know the UBC is involved in this because they've allowed their professor to sign his affidavit in support of the farm, and how valuable these ostrich eggs are, and what they've been doing. And now, obviously, if you were an expert witness working for the university, you'd make sure there were no conflicts of interest before you did that. There was nothing that this university would have, a bit like Dr. Lyle Oldberg. You wouldn't want them to have an ulterior motive for saving this farm. So this is Dr. Pellick's statement on the University letterhead. And then I can drop that one and put this one up. I should have actually put these up at the time and as one document, as I did the others. Share. Feel free to close any of the others, Rick.
Sure.
So
you need that up?
Yes. So University of BC again. This one's 2010 to Karen Esperson of Universal Ostrich Farms. This letter is confirmation of our intention to extend our collaboration with Universal Ostrich Farms on ostrich research in ways to alleviate stress during transportation, yada yada. As you are aware, we are using ostrich oil provided by Universal Ostrich Farm for research in fatty acids composition and antioxidant properties and anti-inflammatory efficacy in the oil. We also appreciate that you have allowed us access to your birds for obtaining blood samples for DNA analysis. Now, this was what Dr. Church from the University of Alberta was doing with Dave Belinsky and obviously with Karen. So we've got two universities, two governments, or multiple governments, all working with this farm, going back for creating DNA databases, doing full-blown research on these birds, going back at least to 2010 now. I'm pretty sure they weren't doing all this for free. All these universities, they get big research grants, and if they're working with a commercial operation, there is some remuneration that goes backwards and forwards. There has to be an upside for the business to do this. But again, does anybody who was buying meat from this farm or buying dog food from this farm understand that these have been lab animals for decades? Working with, basically, these sort of research they're doing is research that is part of Big Pharma. This isn't research for your mom and pop store. The University of BC isn't using their research facilities so the local store can sell some ostrich cream, ostrich face cream, or ostrich eggs for Easter. They're doing this for commercial purposes, working with Big Pharma. Like every single aspect of their current filing in court points to a significant amount of money with some very powerful people and big pharma connections. Now, again, I have to ask, why is everybody who stands to lose so much money? They were so committed. They signed contracts with this company, committing millions of dollars. Why are they nowhere to be seen other than Dr. Lyle Oberg, who says, "Hey, don't kill the birds. Don't kill the birds." And I'm just saying, as the board chair of AHS, just don't kill the birds. Is there something wrong with these birds now, so they're not as valuable, or is it that people are starting to get worried that somebody like you and me would have done exactly what we've done and found out exactly what's been going on? Because everybody, the mainstream media, and I've had the BBC. The BBC reached out to one of the locals. The local gave them my details. I gave them all this information. A BBC reporter, nothing back. Just absolute deadly silence. These are all public I gave all the links to all the documents. These are public documents. Didn't researchers used to do what you do, Rick? Phone companies up, check the facts, and report the full story of what's really going on. This is not some backstreet farm that's struck. I mean, maybe it is right now if everybody's abandoned them. But the reality is, this is a farm that had a bunch of birds that suddenly dropped dead. Were sick, were visibly sick in their own words. They failed to report it. They buried them. They didn't tell anybody about it. Somebody with some very intimate knowledge of the working of the farms and what was happening to the birds called CFAA. While maybe the owners weren't there, maybe they were on holiday, I don't know. I've heard rumors that they weren't there and somebody else phoned, but somebody phoned with intimate. This wasn't just some random passerby saying, "I saw a dead ostrich." This is somebody who gave numbers and how long they'd been dying for and what was happening to them. They were lying in because they had fevers. And that went unreported for 18 days until the CFAA turned up. And now the CFAA seems to have a mandate of, and I can understand, they have a focus, they have a mandate to stay on target. Their legislative authority relies mostly around what's happening there, this H5N1 outbreak. But it does actually also apply to the movement of research material and biohazards that relates to animals. So they should be actually inquiring a little bit more about what this farm is putting in writing in contracts and documents from other people, and the potential impacts to the general population that has been going on for some time now is significant enough that, well, as I say, we said, I think the first time we spoke, I said, Health Canada and other governments around the world closed the world with less direct evidence of some potential hazards than we have here. They closed the world and there was no discussion. I mean, they were still trying to investigate it. And during that period, this farm has produced documents saying, yeah, we were experimenting with that stuff. While you were trying to find out what was going on and closing everyone down because it was so scary, this farm was operating as an open-air biolab with government, with direct government ties and indirect government ties throughout the whole thing. That still appear to some extent because Dr. Lyle Oberg sends his letter January 5th this year. Some of these documents are relatively new. They're not just, some attempt to do something back in 2000. I mean, Dr. Tsukamoto, who's been working with them and had his students and faculty members travel to the farm, was signing contracts with them in April of 2024 with an expectation somebody was writing him and the Farmer USA a check for $4.7 million. But, you know, make sure you donate because they've got some legal fees to pay.
Well, it's the story that we can't get away from.
Yep.
And again, today we're just seeing more of the dots connecting. And it is not a small operation. It is, everything is upside down from what they're portraying through their narrative. But they've been very successful so far with the public relations war that they're waging, where they're just portraying these birds as being all healthy, no risk to the public. Don't let the government kill them. It's just government overreach. There's no risk to anything. And I would argue that there is a potential for risk here. And it's also an assault on our government, on our systems, on even the sovereignty of the country.
Now, everybody knows about the Farm Aid, a Live Aid event on July the 11th.
Yeah.
But there's another event going on the 28th of June. Now, that's obviously a very, you know, we want to make sure we show a very peaceful, you know, come by our group hug type of picture to the general population of, I mean, this almost looks like Trump's war machine.
You literally have birds goose stepping on the bottom of the image.
So in their documents, they've admitted they received the quarantine details. They know what the quarantine requirements are. They say they're following the quarantine requirements. And here's the big bit for this one. Whoops. Camping spots available.
Yeah, that's exactly what you should do at a quarantined farm, is go camping there.
Yeah, and I mean, the imagery there doesn't suggest to me come camping because we're going to have marshmallows. That is a very, very much militarized image of they are setting themselves up for something. And now there's nothing in the documents that they've produced as direct evidence of it, but the CFAA have said to the courts, the reason they haven't gone back, the reason they haven't moved in and done anything for the last little while since the protesters arrived, is that the officers have been directly threatened. Things have been thrown at their vehicles by the protesters. So again,
specifically rocks. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's there in the document. So again, we're talking about these CFAA officers would be looking at perjury charges if they're lying about it. Now, I'm assuming they will have some evidence. They'll have damaged vehicles and other such things. But even if, you know, talk about an intimidation factor. So they've just filed into court and told the courts, because those documents were filed just over a week ago. So the farm has been aware of what's in those documents. And then sort of almost in response to that, the CFAA is scared to come. We get this poster. Come and camp. Bring your armed guerrillas. Goose step all the way. It's like that. There is nothing about that imagery. And again, when I, as a police officer or a retired police officer, am aware that we have fully committed sovereign citizens on site and promoting this, and I see a poster like that, yeah, I think they've just scaled up the risk factor. On the weekend that we have the G7 going on here. That's not warm group hugs. We've got a huge financial organization working with multiple governments, multiple universities all over the world, with multi-million-dollar contracts on the line, and the freedom movement is basically there with the human shields of bouncy castles and children.
And
This
the
is-
involvement of U.S. interests, including someone described as a very generous, wealthy U.S. donor who they are refusing to identify.
And again, this wealthy donor, can he not write the checks for their legal fees? I mean, like literally, we've got RFK, Jay Bhattacharya, Dr. Oz, this other unknown wealthy donor, the Kyoto University, Dr. Lyle Oldberg. Like between them, they've got, they've probably got more money than Trump between them. Not one of them can write a check because they're going to get that money back when they win and they fire up because the reality is everybody going to that farm and donating to that farm has to understand you're doing that because you want the farm to win. The outcome of the farm winning is all these contracts get executed and they create everything that they've been trying to create, which is Big Pharma.
Yeah, because if they win, then the government is in a position where they have to buy into the whole idea that these ostriches carry the potential to save humanity, and they have to turn that farm into a proper research facility. That means they would be dumping millions and millions of dollars into it to upgrade the property itself, the buildings, everything, to staff it, to then get involved in some sort of research, which would then be ongoing. And of course, the people supporting the farm and trying to save the birds would really be condemning them to an ongoing existence as lab animals, which would be experimented on.
That is no life for an animal. And again, once you turn this into an official lab, as I asked Dr. Pellick, what does the university do with its lab animals when the experiment is finished? We euthanize them and incinerate them. So you're not saving the ostriches, you're just exposing them to more experimentation and a fiery death. That's what you're fighting for.
Yeah. And again, the irony, the hypocrisy, none of this actually in the end makes any damn sense. And there is going to be more to come in the days ahead. And with that, it gets us to the top of the hour, and we're in a position to wrap up here. So, David, some final thoughts here tonight as we bring this program to a close.
Yeah. Stay away from the farm. Stop donating to them and start asking questions. And you know what? If you live in that area and you haven't called the authorities to ask them why this is continuing and why nobody's going there, if threats have been made to the CFAA and that's why they're not coming, although they have filed that they believe this is a dangerous environment and it risks farms in the area and people. In their filing, they say the risk is to people as well. Then why aren't you doing anything? Because there comes a point where you have to say, the CFAA, you can't say I'm scared. Your job is to go do something. If you're scared to go there, then you take the RCMP. If you and if you think the risk is beyond that, then you call Health Canada. At the end of the day, you're not protecting anyone. And if you're in that area, you have a direct interest in what's going on. And you've seen here tonight, go and have a look at the documents. If you're not worried, then you're not reading. If you're not paying attention, I don't want to frighten anyone, but there has to be a reality check here. You're either saying that this farm is running one of the most elaborate scams I've ever seen, involving some very powerful people with contracts going back decades, or they're doing exactly what they say they've been doing and nobody's paying any attention. So you need to start getting them. The local community at some point is going to have to stand up, and there are some of them that have stood up, and I'm trying to fight for their rights to get some answers. But you've seen in those court documents, there are email addresses for CFAA officers, there are phone numbers, there There is actually, I redacted it out, but Dr. Lyle Oberg's phone number is in that documentation that was filed into court. You know what? He's a public, he's a person that has a direct interest in this and should be answering some questions. So you know what? Maybe the BBC, could you give him a call and ask him some questions? Maybe, you know, Rebel News. Seeing as though you're not invited to the G7, maybe you can actually do some work on the Ostrich Farm. You spent enough time there. Get the truth out, and let's put this to bed, because nobody's saving these animals as they stand right now. The CFA is either going to cull them, or they're going to be put to death after the research is over. Either way, these animals are, and their fate was sealed by this research lab and everybody associated with them. And you have to understand that. The government didn't condemn these birds. The people who turned them into lab animals did.
Frankenbirds.
Yeah, sadly.
And with that, folks, I'm going to leave you with a lighthearted view of a horror show as Maverick and the News Brothers take us out with Frankenrod. See you tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern, on the flip side.
Out of the junkyard, piece by piece, welded together, can't find no peace. Hood from the Chevy, tail from the Ford, rising like a demon that you can't ignore. Chrome from the past, rust in its veins, blowing off wrecks, now it's going insane. Wheels spin wild, headlights gleam, it's alive, it's a twisted metal dream. When the lightning strikes and the engines roar, you know it's coming back for more. A beast of bolts with a heart of steel. Franken car, you're too real. Franken car, turn through the night, stitched together, ready for the fight. Dark and twisted, you don't care, with a heart and soul, wicked glare. Franken car, you're coming alive. Run for your life, you won't survive. The tires screech, smoke in the air, no driver inside, but someone's there. Radio plays an eerie tune underneath the blood red moon. Rattling bones, engine growls, it's hungry now. Hear the howls. From the scrap it came to life. A monster car, born from strife. Rev it up, feel the fear. Franken cars, drawing near. With every turn, its eyes grow cold. This car's got a mind that can't be controlled. Franken car, turn through the night, stitched together, ready for the fight. Dark and twisted, you don't care, with a haunted soul and a wicked glare. Franken car, you're coming alive. Run for your life, you won't survive. You won't survive. Backyard screams, engines wail. Every part's a twisted tale. Ghost of the road, a beast reborn. Feel the terror in the sound of its horn. It's more than metal, it's something more. A creature rolling, craving war. No one knows where it's from or why, but Franken car will make you cry. Franken car, turn through the night, stitched together, ready for the fight. Dark and twisted, you don't care, with a haunted soul and a wicked glare. Franken car, you're coming alive. Run for your life, you won't survive. So if you see those headlights bright, don't stop running, don't trust the lights. Franken car's out on the prowl. It's alive, it's on the prowl now. Growl.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.